Robin Hood, where those who are using excess energy are paying into a fund, and we use those dollars to help offset and to allow residents and commercial businesses to decrease their energy use, save dollars, and through a variety of programs that we'll talk about. So we have a very successful program. One of the programs that we've had in place, the Energy Smart program, has been extremely successful. But of course, that was due to a Department of Energy grant, a 3-year grant. It was a tri-county grant. That expired about a year ago, and with the board's blessing and the city council, we were able to utilize a windfall of some dollars that were not being utilized through our grant programs to keep that program going to 2015. The core board next month will start to look at ways to see how we can continue to sustain that Energy Smart program, because it has been so successful. But that will be a challenge for the core board, and that will be looked at in terms as we go forward with our budget. So that's sort of a quick oversight, and I think as you'll see, we've got some great programs that have been very successful with some really great results.
Great. Thanks, George. So yeah, we want to, last year when we came to you and we requested some funding, which you approved, we said we would come back to you and give you an update on where we are with our programs. And so that's what we want to do first today, is just really go over some of the programs that we have done this year, and then we can go into the funding discussion. And Jason is here to talk about the Randy Udall Energy Pioneer Grants, and we'll tell you all about that. So just the history, you know, it was established in 1999, REMP was. It's part of the building code, and it's designed to offset environmental impacts and greenhouse gas emissions produced by non-complying exterior snowmelt, pools, spa systems, and homes that exceed 5,000 square feet. So there's a formula that's used by the city and the county to calculate what payments are made if a homeowner or a business owner chooses not to locally offset their additional carbon usage. And then those fees are paid into the city and the county, and they're pooled. And then we can, oops, I forgot that part. We can...
That's actually the microphone.
Oh. Then we can...
So you have to hit the button again on the microphone because you just turned it off. Sorry.
There you go. Sorry, I'm not usually this technically inept. Thank you. So then we, CORE can use those funds, and we use them to administer the program, and we've developed several new programs that I'll discuss. So we have our Energy Smart rebates, as George mentioned, and those go to the residential, the commercial sector for energy efficiency and renewable energy. We have our grant program. It was formerly called the Green Key Grants. We renamed it this year in honor of Randy Udall, the founding director of CORE. It's the first anniversary of his passing this week, which is sad. And then we offer energy design assistance grants, community grants, and then the funds to deliver those programs. So what have we achieved? We know that we've really helped build energy awareness across the region. You're probably aware that there's other organizations similar to CORE, like EVOS, which is now Walking Mountain Science Center. There's 4CORE, there's OR, and just in general, we built awareness in the Roaring Fork Valley. We have supported progressive energy code adoptions. We have helped the town of Snow West Village and the town of Carbondale adopt new codes this year. We're working with the town of Basalt, hoping them to get that done. We've helped establish a market for building efficiency and renewable energy installations. You see more and more in town and more in the valley. We've actually mapped them out this year. We had an intern. Her name is Steffi Clawiter, thanks to John Peacock. She is an original resident of Aspen, but she's getting a master's in renewable energy program management in Germany. And so she came and spent a month of her vacation with us, and she helped us map the solar installations in the valley. So it's pretty cool to see how much is being installed. And then, you know, we really just look at how do we incent energy emissions and footprints in the built environment. So. George mentioned the Energy Smart program, and this just to give you an idea of how many assessments have been done over the last 3 years and the building improvements and what the investment has been, and it's pretty impressive around the 3-county area. So It just gives you an idea. We've done over almost 1,000 assessments. We've got 920 home improvements. We've got $3 million in investments, and 12,000 hours by contractors. And one of the important things is the health and safety issues. 46 have been identified, so that's 5% of the homes that actually have health and safety issues across the 3-county area. So it's important to think about. And then the annual savings is 22,000 kBTUs and 322,000 in dollar savings.
Can I ask for clarification on that last slide?
Sure.
Was that the total of homes done across the 3
Counties? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So in the 9 months, so what you approved last year was for us to start spending some unspent Green Key Grant dollars. And in those 9 months, we've done 173 assessments just in the Roaring Fork Valley. It's pretty interesting. We're amazed. I mean, we're happy, but it's great. And so our estimated annual savings just from those assessments, because whenever we go into a home, we install light bulbs and we install programmable thermostats and things like pipe wrap, and we estimate that we get about $7,000 in annual savings. We get 60,000 kilowatt hours, basically 48 metric tons of CO2, and that amounts to $22,000 in rebates for home energy assessments. On the residential side, we've rebated 257 projects. Now, those could be multiple projects in a home, which you can do. We've allowed that this year. We may change that just because what we realize is you can do a solar thermal, you can do a PV, you can do a boiler, and you can do an insulation upgrade and all get a rebate. I mean, it's all good stuff, and maybe that's the key, is because what they study is the more retrofits you do, the more savings you get, and to get that homeowner to completely get their home done, so to speak, then you don't have to worry about it in the future. We have an annual savings of $20,000. We've saved 96,000 kilowatt hours, 15,000 therms, and 158 metric tons of CO2. And our total rebate is 50,000, and that's how much we've spent out in rebates. And what we find, and I'm going to give you the total of the total project investments because it's added up for the renewable energy and the residential rebates. So we've rebated 41 renewable energy systems, and that accounts for 347,000 kilowatt hours and 280 metric tons of CO2. You can see our rebate total is $41,000 for renewable energy and $50,000 for residential rebates. But the total investment in the projects is $2 million. So we're getting a 1 to 10 return on the dollars that are being invested. So it's a good return for the investment, I would say.
So could you go break that down for me?
Okay.
What are you talking about?
So for every dollar that Core has rebated, we're getting 10 times that invested by the individual or the business, the individual in either energy efficiency or renewable energy systems.
And is that just an offshoot of that investment, or is that a requirement of that investment?
Well, it hasn't been. It's because we've set our rebates to a level that will get us that return.
So it's an
offshoot.
An offshoot of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So for instance, if someone puts in a energy efficient hot water heater, they spend 10 times as much of the amount of the rebate or whatever that formula is, because the rebate's only a small portion of what the total cost is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it might be a little bit higher but it averages out. It might be the rebate to ratio for a water heater might be a little bit higher, but for a boiler example, there's thousands of dollars in our rebate. So yes, that's the right way to look at it.
So then, Mona, would you say that the rebate is a sort of a Kickstarter for a homeowner to take the next step and actually make that investment that perhaps they would not have without that initial seed money? Or
we really try to do that, and I think the assessment is sort of the foot in the door, if you will, because when a person gets an assessment done, and some of you have had assessments done,
we call them back. Charlie will call them back and go over the assessment with them and ask them what their plan is and can he help them develop a plan. And then we oftentimes will look at contractor bids and help them suss out what might be the best boiler to purchase without, choosing one contractor or another. But yes, the assessment is sort of really the gateway, but then we really try to help everybody develop a plan and then see that plan through. And the incentive I find in talking to people in the community is really what gets them going. So yeah, it helps to really move them forward on a project.
And then one quick follow-up. We also have a revolving loan fund available.
Right.
So do we talk about how many people have utilized that?
Not as many people as we'd like. And, the revolving loan fund still exists with Energy Smart, even though we spent the rebate dollars and the rest of the funds. The revolving loan fund exists. It's, bless you, it's like $900,000. And about 270 of it has been actually accessed for loans. And, out of the loans, probably 10 have been in Pitkin County. So more could than have, but yeah. So then we offer commercial rebates as well. If you recall, we started the commercial program with the Main Street program probably in 2011, I think. That was before my time. I was at the GO at the time. And then so what we realized was pretty successful. We came and we asked you for some money the first year in 2012, and then continued the program this year. And you can see that our annual we've rebated 72 rebates, and again, this is just September through May, so this is just a 9-month window, but wanted to give you those numbers since we haven't been here for a while. So we have an annual savings of $55,000, 359,000 kilowatt hours, 20,000 therms, so 298 million tons of CO2. We have a project investment, so the core rebates have totaled $55,000, and businesses have invested $550,000 in upgrades. So it's, to me, it's a really pretty good return. And the other thing to think about is that sales tax dollars, it's permit fees, that's contractors that are going to work directly in the valley. And about half of all of the dollars actually are spent in Pitkin County. Of all the rebate dollars are spent in Pitkin County. We did an analysis so we could look at that. But, we serve, Core serves Aspen to Glenwood, but about half of all of the money we spent has been spent in Pitkin County.
So I'm just trying to do some quick math here, although the numbers are a little hard. 72 projects at $550,000, so that's an average of $8,000 a project.
Right.
What are some examples of these projects that commercials are doing? I mean, $8,000 gets you a hot water heater, I guess.
Well, it'll get you more than a hot water heater, unless it's a commercial grade.
Commercial grade. Well, this is commercial.
Right. This is a commercial program.
Home hot water heater is about $3,000.
Right. So, and our rebate is $2,500 or 25% of the cost of the project. So if you spend, what was your estimate again? $5,000?
$8,000 per divided by the 72. And that's what I
right.
did
So you could get up to $2,000 for an $8,000 project. A lot of them are lighting. We've been partnering with Holy Cross Energy because we help the businesses also go after other rebates that are available. So Holy Cross Energy rebates, if it's a lighting program, we'll help them get those rebates as well. They could be boilers. We've been working with a local company called FridgeWise, because there's a lot of inefficient refrigerators in gas stations and convenience stores, liquor stores, restaurants, that kind of thing, that can really their efficiency can be increased. So we've been working with them pretty closely. A lot of them are on the electricity side.
They're doing the fans for refrigerators.
Exactly.
At Rustique, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of the rebates come in, is electricity savings for lighting, for refrigeration upgrades, and then typically boilers and hot water heaters. Some do controls, not that many. We're not really into, because most of the buildings that we work on are pretty small. This is, again, small to medium-sized commercial mainly. So.
Now, I'm sorry to pause you here a little bit, because I've asked this question, I think, in the last several years of presentations. Not that you've been here for all of them. You were here last year for it. What can we do to get landlords and tenants working together to take advantage of these things. I've always felt that that's kind of a major problem with the landlord being the tenant being in a lease, not wanting to make a capital improvement to major utility aspects in the building because of short-term leases, unknown whether or not the landlord's going to renew, and the landlord getting the asset but not wanting to pay for things that are going to give savings to the tenant because the tenants are paying the triple net leases.
Funny you bring that up. We were just talking about that, Jason and I, like 15 minutes ago. What we want to try to do is, what we try to do is with that incentive is to help incent the property owner to put some cash down as well. Sometimes this particular case was more of a nonprofit occupying some space, but it's like, how can we get them, so the incentive, so we try to help them by contacting them face to face. We've been doing a lot of personal outreach. We've been working with property owners like John McBride, Ron Lund, who's their property owner, to help them access those rebates so they can see that they can get a core rebate, they can get a Holy Cross Energy rebate or Source Gas. We're working with other entities. So really trying to get in there and make that contact of property owners and laying out what the financial benefit to them is from their investment. And then, even though that they're not paying their utility bills, sometimes that it will benefit their tenant is more likely to stay there, to stay in business. So those are the kinds of things we talk with them about. But yeah, we've been reaching out. We've been doing a lot of personal contact because, if you're the landlord, you're not going to call us up and say that. But if we reach out to you and we talk to you and we say, here's what you can do, and you understand it, it's a good investment. So we try to point it out that way. All right. And one of the things that Steve Casey is still on the core board, he pointed out, is we're getting a better bang for the buck on the commercial side. So as George mentioned, we'll be talking about, we're not going to abandon the residential sector by any means because the programs are going so fast. But, can we do something to expand potentially the budget for the commercial sector? Because there is a better bang for the buck there, it appears. And when we looked at we just got a report also from the city in terms of the commercial sector. The residential sector actually pays more into rent than the commercial sector does. But anyway.
So Mona, when you say better bang for the buck for a commercial side, what do you mean?
The savings are greater usually on the commercial side. Yeah, the energy savings.
But there's a commercial enterprise involved. My preference is residential because you have people who are struggling, and that savings means something to them, their family, and to their continued existence or continued residence in the Warrenford Valley.
Right.
Commercial side has adjustments they can make, more adjustments than a family does.
Right, yeah. And a lot of our, you can see that there's a rebate allocation, how it kind of splits out. As I said, we just, that was one of his suggestions, and so we're just evaluating how do we balance it all. It's all important. Everybody's important. And so it's just a little pie chart of what our rebate allocation looks like. You can see it's spread over assessments and rebates and then commercial rebates and renewable energy. So it's a pretty good even spread, really, when you think about it, when you look at it. So.
And the balance to that, Michael, I would add is, and I agree with you 100%, that the sustainability for a family that's struggling to be able to lower their energy cost over a long period of time is instrumental. But the other side to that equation is the carbon footprint that we have throughout the valley. You could save 1/10 in a residential that you can putting some of that money to use in a commercial outlet.
Yeah, but otherwise we just invest in modernizing coal-fired plants. So this is also a social program.
Yeah. Steve?
There was a meeting where I was standing next to Amory Lovins, and people were they were brainstorming on ways that the city of Aspen could achieve 100% renewable energy for their electricity. And Amory Lovins thought for a minute, and then he wrote down on the chart to retrofit all the commercial lighting in Aspen would achieve the goal that Aspen was trying to get rid of reduce their electric energy use by that much, that they would achieve their goal of 100% renewable. So that just shows how big of an impact that something in the commercial sector can have on the total energy use.
Right. I mean, I think efficiency really has a good bang for the buck in terms of energy savings. And, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, the low-hanging fruit, you know, we kind of think of lighting as like low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit grows back, because a few years ago we were recommending, you know, compact fluorescent light bulbs. Now we're LED is the way to go, and they even last longer and have less, you know, better light quality and just so much, you know, more positive benefits than compact fluorescents did. So, and same thing with refrigeration technology. I mean, some of those things just they keep improving, which is great.
But the problem is you have Jevons paradox, which is the more efficient you make something, the more people use it. So people will add more lighting. Right. Because their lighting bill is 1/3 of what it used to be, and then they'll start adding more lighting. So it's problematic.
Unless we can make it good quality lighting, and I would use the Keating Gallery as an example. We've used them a few times because they don't need to add lighting. They have really great lighting. It's quality, and it's all LED. So.
But if you notice, I mean, when I first came here, there were no Christmas tree lights in the commercial core, and now there are Christmas tree lights everywhere, and they. In some cases, they stay on for long periods of time. So, because it's cheap enough to do.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. On to our next program. We'd like to give you a REACH program update. This is one of the programs that you helped us start last year, allowed us to go forward with. And we had 45 applicants, and this program just targeted Pitkin County. It's our low to moderate income program. And REACH doesn't stand for anything. It's just, I just want to be clear, it's not an acronym. I know, but it doesn't stand for anything. But we felt like it's been pretty successful. We had 45 applicants for 30 spots. We had 38 people in the income category in Pitkin County. So we had 7 applicants outside of Pitkin County. We are serving 27 people, 27 household owners in Pitkin County. A couple of them dropped out for various reasons. They each received up to $2,500 in work in their house. We started out with an energy assessment. We didn't find any with any health and safety issues. And they received an assessment, energy, in air sealing, insulation, refrigeration, new refrigerators, appliances, lighting, and some window coverings. So you can't do a lot for $2,500, but those are the types of measures that we have been working with them on. 11 of the clients that applied were referred to Northwest COG, but Northwest COG was only able to serve one of them. We actually served the remainder of them, and Northwest COG is is the low-income weatherization program. They can actually only serve 2 households in Pitkin County a year. I didn't know that. I just found that out not too long ago because we were gathering some information in preparation for this. So anyway, and one of them will be served by Grid Alternatives. So Grid Alternatives is a group that is trying to install solar for low-income households, and they're one of the applicants for the Randy Udall Energy Pioneer Grant this year. They actually will have an installation July 18th in Carbondale, not related to their grant request or anything, but they started in California and they have come to Colorado, and they decided the Roaring Fork Valley is an area that they want to try to serve, so that's kind of nice. So as I mentioned, I've already gone over the measures. Sorry, I skipped ahead of my slide program. But we will have the projects done by July 14th, and we're going to analyze all the savings from that so we can give you an update on that. We are asking for funding to continue it next year. We would tweak a few things. We'd probably have a longer application period. We were really trying to roll it out, get it out for this year, because we wanted to get the program implemented. So we only had about a 2-month application period, so we'd probably do it again we'd start it in September, so give people a little bit longer time and get it going, and maybe try to get it going a little bit earlier so we could get some of the savings sooner. But we felt that it was successful. Anybody have any questions or anything? that. Okay. So then this year we have the Randy Udall Energy Pioneer Grants. We formerly called it the Green Key Grants. As you know, their objectives are to decrease energy consumption, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, promote energy efficiency or renewable energy, to help advise the community on energy-related issues and support research and development of cutting-edge clean energy technologies. So, what I wanted this list is to just let you know, one of the things that we worked on last year and came back to you was to give you an update on what I felt was impressive when we looked at the list of projects that we were able to close this past year. You may recall we had a lot of hanging projects for some time, and we got direction from the Corps Board to reduce the contract amount, to work more closely with the grant recipients, and so we have done that. And so we've closed out a couple of old grants, and a number of the 2012 grantees have completed their projects. So there's a couple of pages there, and it adds up to 23 different projects that were closed between 2013 and up to date. And that totals $745,000 that we basically, of projects that are completed. That does not include their contribution, because a lot of them, like the Mountain Rescue Aspen project at the top of the list on number 17, that just helped pay for a portion of their investments in solar thermal and solar PV. The Randy Udall Energy Pioneer grants, we ask for at least a 50% match, so that would double it. At the bottom of the list, I hope you'll notice that we awarded a design assistance grant to the Pitkin County Library to do some energy modeling as part of their remodel that they're working on. So anyway, I felt like that was a fairly impressive list of projects to get done, and that we didn't have to actually do them, we just had to help provide some guidance and make sure that they did everything that they were supposed to do and collect the paperwork and then issue those funds. So just along the program trends, as I mentioned and George mentioned, we were seeing a demand for rebates is increasing over last year. We're trying to work with various partnerships for larger users. That was one of our goals. We are working with Aspen School District. We helped them get a $125,000 Think Big grant from Holy Cross Energy. They had to match it, and our staff is helping them. Marty Treadway, if you know him, he's working very closely with them to help them get that. Their savings will be really big, which is great. They're doing some things like they've had one switch for the entire high school for lighting, and they've gotten the controls in there so they can have multiple switches. So if you have a activity in the gym, you don't have to switch on the whole school. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Just things like that. We've been partnering with SKICO. We did our REACH program, and then we're working with multifamily unit projects more. We've had more outreach to them. Charlie's been reaching out to them. We're also working on a project with Hunter, God, I just went blank, and it's not Hunter Creek. Thank you. It's a 377 multi-unit apartment complex, and we've been working with them to do an energy performance contract. The Pitkin County didn't actually do one, but City of Aspen has done it. They have 12 boilers that are old and aging, and they might be able to replace those through an energy performance contract. It would actually save the residents more each month than in utility bills than the amount of money they would pay out to pay for the cost of the project. And what we have experienced is that they've had 2 boiler failures at inconvenient times, and if you've ever had a hot water heater go out or a furnace go out in the middle of winter, you end up, yeah, your building, right? Yeah, it ends up costing you more money because you have to rent a boiler, you have to tap into it's just a nightmare, and those are 40-year-old boilers. So we've been working with them to help them, and you'll see there's a grant request from Hunter Creek this year as well. And just one of our goals has been, and this was at the direction of the Corps Board, and staff, Jason's really been our grants and program manager, really try to increase the quality of the grant applications and the quantity of the grant applications. And I don't want to steal that information, but we feel like we're doing that. We're getting the word out. We've really worked on getting the word out a little bit better this year and last year, and we had $1.5 million of applications for $500,000 in grants. And the quality is good too, so that is important. We have a lot of good, we just moved our office from the Yellowbrook to the ABC, and I went through, 20 years of core stuff, and just, it's been really pretty cool to see blueprints and all the work where the designers and the architects are just really getting on. They just have a much better understanding of energy efficiency, so it's kind of nice. We do some other programs, just to remind you. We work with Waste Free Roaring Fork. We do recycling events. We've got education and research going on a waste hauling ordinance in Carbondale. We've been working on the Watershed Regional Water Conservation Plan. We started that with a grant from the Colorado Water Conservation Board last year. We've been doing a lot of outreach and education. We table at least 3 events every month, and we speak at schools and Rotary clubs, that kind of thing. And then we've been helping, one of the pieces about CORE is some policy work. We worked with Gail Schwartz on developing some state legislation that would allow smaller communities to do energy performance contracting work. We've been partnering with CLEAR on some work in the town of Carbondale to consider energy use fee that might be on their individual utility bills or some other kind of permanent funding source for energy programs in Carbondale. And then building code adoption, I've mentioned that. We've worked in the town of Snowmass and Basalt, it's Carbondale. And then just outreach, I mentioned, we've had a few articles in the paper about CORE and what we do and the grant programs, and we're just trying to make sure that people know what we're doing and what we're trying to do and how we're doing it. We have our 20th anniversary this year in September. And we'll keep you apprised. We're going to have some kind of a celebration to acknowledge all the work that's happened with all of the sponsors of CORE and what's transpired. So anyway, that's it for the program update that I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Michael?
Well, as I've often said, we need to get rid of the municipality of building a pool in the first place and building a heated driveway, because it just doesn't make sense to, on the one hand, drive with your foot on the accelerator, on the other hand, put your other foot on the brake and call it even. Right? There's something wrong there. So I implore you to think of ways of doing it. I mean, one thing that occurs to me is that if you were going to put a heated pool in, and you don't want to put solar on your property, that you do an off-site solar investment of some sort, and you do that investment essentially for your entire property, for all your energy needs, not just the energy needs, but it puts you into a different category. And so you in effect are underwriting solar development at a time when solar development is going down. I mean, the prices of solar is going down. So I think this is great, all these programs, but we need to try to get rid of that. We need to get more efficiency from the get-go, and the ethic of being efficient. There's a sense of, well, I'm permitted to do it, so I will, and it'll cost me some money. We thought that was going to be a disincentive, and it hasn't been. So that's problematic.
Well, I'm glad you bring the off-site project, and actually, Cindy and I have been talking about what kinds of other things we could do because of that. Because we agree. I mean, we're just staying even, like you were saying. We're just kind of idling, and we need to actually raise the bar a little bit higher. I have not sat down with the Community Energy Collective yet, but I was told that they're building, and maybe you guys know because you get all the permit requests, but that they're doing a large solar project in Basalt, on the Pitkin County side of Basalt. And so, not yet? Nothing? No, have to dig into it. Maybe it's Eagle County. But, before I came on, there was a discussion about, could they go to Rifle or something like that? And what we're trying to do is also keep the investment dollars in the county as well, or at least in the valley, because then those monies just keep flowing back to us. And so I had a conversation with somebody who was like, well, what about if a large project was built in Pitkin County? And I thought, well, we should start thinking about ways to incent participation in that. And your suggestion might be one opportunity to do that, because, yeah, I think, the small amount that somebody can choose to offset still doesn't really get at the meat of the matter, what they're doing.
Efficiency loss, because
Yeah.
the time is involved, and
Right.
there's all kinds of efficiency losses. So let's do it at the source, which is that person.
Yeah.
And the penalty, it's not really a penalty, but if you want those kind of inefficient uses, you're not going to transfer money from your bank account. You're going to make a substantial difference locally.
Right. Yeah. So we are talking about that, and just because we realize that, like you said, we're just staying even here. So we need to kind of raise the bar a little bit. So anybody else have any questions? So I think then what we want to do is move on to the memo that you received. So that we could go through that and look at the funding proposal that we have for this year. And part of this effort is to get your discussion, approval, changes, if you will, to the projects that have been supported by the core board of directors for funding from the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program. So you have received a memo and then a document that describes all of the grant proposals and the recommended amount of funding for them. I'm going to let Jason go through that.
Sure. And that resolution also includes funding proposals in accordance with the approved core budget for this year, which we'll be bringing back in front of you guys with a resolution on July 9th, I think we're started.
Right.
So,
A week from today, or tomorrow.
So I'm Jason Haber. I'm the grants director for CORE and oversee the process for our Randy Udall True Energy Pioneer grant process. This year we had a robust advertising program a few months before a May 1st deadline for applications. We did a lot of direct outreach to local government organizations, schools, other nonprofits, and worked through a variety of sustainability committees that we partner with throughout the valley. We received 16 applications for funding this year. One was determined to be ineligible for funding. 2 were funded through community grants to support their projects that were very straightforward. And 9 were recommended, as you see in the draft resolution, for funding. We basically convened first off a Citizens Grant Review Committee. This year that was comprised of 6 individuals, but 2 at the very last minute had emergencies, one including an immediate birth of a new baby that prevented them from being involved in the process. But Jason Lasser, a local architect and designer, Chris Mengus, who works with the City of Aspen's Canary Initiative, Emery Holton, who works with Amatis Controls, which is a renewable energy metering and monitoring company, a local company, and Fritz Diether, who's a energy analyst that works with CORE's Energy Smart program, all participated in our Citizens Grant Review Committee with myself and Lucy Kessler as staff support. And they made a series of a recommendation to the CORE Board of Trustees, which reviewed that in early June, and we're forwarding their recommendations on to you for funding in the attached. So with that, I'm happy to go through each of the projects that are recommended for funding and their amounts, and just a very brief overview of each project, if you'd like, and then if you have specific questions or comments on any of them, we can get into those. Is that?
Yeah, Jason, we have time. Let's take them one by one, and we'll ask questions if people do on each individual
As they
one.
come up. Okay.
They're only.
Just for the record, I'll step away from the table when you discuss the Hunter Creek grant, because I do live there.
Okay. And Rachel, just to clarify, that is limited to the Phase 2 HOA? That's you? Okay.
I'm not free market.
Okay, good. So first off, we have ACES, the Aspen Center for Environmental Studies. They proposed to install 25 kilowatts of solar PV at their Rock Bottom Ranch site. The committee and the core board were strongly in support of this proposal. It's got a strong education and visibility component to it, and very straightforward and significant energy and carbon reductions. So if there are any questions about that one, we can get into it. Otherwise, pretty straightforward.
Well, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but, you know, one of the interesting things at the Basalt Library, they had a sort of a readout of what their solar, and that seems to not be working anymore. So, or at least I haven't noticed it in operation. So sometimes it's turned on, sometimes it's turned off. So the educational aspect of it does have, it's really fundamental to these projects to allow people to visually assess, particularly young children, what the efficiencies are, what happens on cloudy days and what happens on sunny days. And so you need to monitor it on an ongoing process. And I think that over the years, they need to be able to say it still works and we're still educating the public. So, and I think you should check in with Basalt and see what they're dealing with.
And if you'd like, we could condition this approval to require the inclusion of a monitoring element and a display kiosk.
Yeah, that's what makes this interesting. I mean, it's an educational facility, it should have that aspect on the surface of it.
Is that the will of the board?
George? Yeah, you'll address another grant applicant which the core board specifically wanted to have that included because of the importance of the educational aspect.
Yeah.
Okay. Jason, kind of a generic question applying to all of them. Some of them you are recommending funding for just a smaller portion of what was requested. Others you're doing a higher percentage. Did you use some kind of a matrix for analyzing the different projects and deciding which ones to favor more?
We did, and I have it here in front of me, and it was provided. It's a matrix that is completed at the Citizens Grant Review Committee level, and that is presented along with the recommendation to the core board, and we don't provide it in the packet materials that come to you, but it is a matrix that looks at all of the applications and ranks them across a series of criteria that include community benefit, cost effectiveness, visibility, education, environmental benefits, energy efficiency, leverage, which would be additional funding that's brought to the project, whether or not this is a unique opportunity, whether it incorporates new technology, how it incorporates green design and energy savings and carbon saving value. Okay, and so we rank those on a 1 to 3 or 0 to 2, basically. So it's a 0, 1, or 2, and it can be any increment thereof that's applied in each of those criteria. And we come up with a tier 1, 2, or 3 ranking for each of the projects. So fundamentally, you know, these projects are limited by being capital improvements that have direct measurable energy savings associated. That's kind of the bottom line criteria for being eligible. And then we get much more subjective into each of those criteria, and ultimately working within that funding cap of $500,000, the board and the grant review committee kind of, you know, work the numbers in there to disperse the funding that's available based on a merit kind of ranking. So is that satisfying?
Yep. And then the total amount, you had a maximum set amount that you were able to disperse this year.
Yeah, that's the assumption we've been operating under. So okay. The core board each year adopts a budget, and that gets approved here at the BOCC and by the city of Aspen. We over the last year or two have set for the Randy Udall grants a $500,000 amount for that. There is additional surplus in the REMP fund at this point, so at your discretion, if you wanted to ask us to, either appropriate additional funds or less than what's being recommended, there's room to work in there.
Okay, thank you.
And that's an interesting point that I might just raise and backtrack here to the kind of question that you were asking about this first item and what we should add in this resolution potentially. Having some sort of educational aspect where someone can see, the wattage coming in or the wattage going out. I like that idea, but there's an additional cost to it. And I don't know whether or not something needs to be added in the resolution in terms of that being part of a requirement, and I certainly don't want to burden the organization with a tremendous cost to that requirement, and I would potentially even consider paying for that additional cost if it were $1,000, $2,000, and adding that to the grant, as you said.
I guess.
Per project, you mean?
No, just this first item,
Okay.
the Rock Bottom Ranch solar panel, having something where the kids that go out there can see, the energy savings or, something, that sort of stuff. I agree with what Michael was saying, and I think what George reiterated is that being an important part of this project, specifically for a place like Rock Bottom Ranch.
I guess what I would suggest is I'll take the request from BOCC and look back at the application, see if they propose to include a kiosk. If they don't, I'll contact the applicant, see what it would take to have that added on, and we'll bring that back with additional information when we come for first reading.
Thank you.
It would seem that the same requirement should be for Compass as well, since they're doing a solar.
Compass has that in their built into their proposal, but we can put it as a condition that the kiosk be included.
Yeah, so it's not dropped
Right.
during design engineering or something.
So if I could just interject here,
Yeah.
one of the things that we have been talking about is creating some kind of an educational platform, if you will, because the library is, with their remodel, they're very interested in being kind of a center for sustainability, and part of their design grant is they want to share the information with groups, and so we had a conversation with ACES about their what they're trying to do, and we've talked to SKICO and we've talked to the school district, and so what we would like to try to propose, and we didn't have a specific proposal, is to create an educational platform that you could tap into, that you'd go to a place like the Basalt Library. They'd all look the same, basically. It would be the same platform that you would see at every location and tie into a web-based system that would say, in Pitkin County, here's where the solar systems are, here's the production, here's the that kind of thing. We don't foresee anything like costing just a lot of money, but we're trying to. I mean, and we haven't talked with the board about it, but that's kind of what we would like to propose. Is something that's kind of everybody gets the same. So it's like we would give them a little extra money, and they would do what we tell them to do. So it's all the same, basically. They get the same kind of educational outreach tool. So anyway.
So is that the thought process, is that you'd come up with an idea for that and potentially fund it with some of these funds in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. I think the educational value is part of what stems people to make the changes when they see, wow, okay, I could save that much, or I should do this, and those are the other people that are doing it, and that's how they do it. Rachel?
Yeah, I agree with that, and it's kind of like if you could get the conduit in the ground while they're building the project, and then be able to fill it with the content as time goes forward. I wouldn't want to hold up any projects on that,
Yeah.
but to me, there's starting to be 1,000 different little stories out there, and it's when they're woven together that they've become a full fabric that starts to carry some weight. And it's being able to see how your little part is adding to that story, and that instead of what difference does it make, I'm just one person, it's like, well, this is what collectively has happened. So I think that'd be a very good idea.
Okay, thank you. The next recommended grant is for the Aspen Community Church. It's a 100-plus-year-old building right over here, just a couple blocks away. This is for the replacement of an existing boiler and hot water heater with a new 95% efficient modulating condensing sealed combustion variable speed boiler and an indirect fired side arm hot water heater. Significant savings in their gas consumption of 40% and 14% reduction in their electrical load. The committee and the board were very supportive of this grant. They really like the idea that you're taking a historic building that could become obsolete and inefficient over time and really extending the life of that. And the energy savings in that alone are really significant and very much in line with the intent of these grants. This building also, in the last year, worked with CORE as they were working through some of their structural issues that they had with the building. Also did a significant insulation and air sealing project in their attic. So now they've got a sealed cap on the building. Now they're looking to upgrade the efficiency of their mechanical plant, and so it's a highly supported grant application with approved funding recommended at $20,000.
Rachel?
Yeah, I would just note for the public record of the grassroots viewing audience how many non-church-oriented activities occur at the community church, whether it's rehearsals or recitals or the AA meetings. You know, there's just they have a lift-up type of operation that's not formally with lift-up, but I think it's Tom's Door. And they do a lot for the community, make their facility available. So this goes far beyond the historic building.
Thank you. Good point. Okay, Compass is, in this case, the Aspen Community School in Woody Creek. They, as most of you probably know, are doing a complete tear down and rebuild of their main school building and building a new gymnasium and community multi-purpose room. That's a significant capital project. Obviously, they've gone through a major capital campaign and continue to do fundraising for that project in general. But this request is specifically to support the inclusion of LED lighting and daylighting controls, boiler upgrades, and a 39 kilowatt solar PV system. They have received core grants in previous years, 2 grants totaling $27,000, and in the last couple of years when we were going through reconciliation of existing grants that are outstanding, the core board and I believe the BOCC offered to allow an extension of those grants to remain available and as a for leverage in their ongoing capital campaign. So they have $27,500 sitting in a core account right now, ready to be used towards the project, and this would be a recommendation for an additional $125,000 to support the project elements that were mentioned.
And none of those projects are double dipping per se. It's not like they asked for it and they're asking for it. They're different projects altogether.
Right. They have a significant list of efficiency upgrades and renewable energy upgrades. That, you know, for one, are included in what's specifically recommended for funding here. But as far as the 27.5, that's a general. At the time, it was going to be for either mechanical system upgrades in the existing building or lighting upgrades in the existing building before they knew that they were going to tear those down and replace them with new buildings. So now we'd have an additional 27.5 available to support above and beyond efficiency upgrades that are what are proposed here. So,
thank you.
And in that one, we will also make sure that we put the note about including the integrated kiosk for their renewable energy production. They actually had a very interesting proposal that they're trying to generate funding for, and it's something maybe that we could take another look at in this application, but they wanted to do wiring and circuiting in each of the classrooms with monitoring information as to the actual energy load that's being demanded from each classroom so that they could develop a inter-class, basically, competition and understand what each class was either generating or consuming on a daily basis. So really incorporating a strong educational component and informational component around that. So I'll go back and talk to them about that as well. Moving on to number 4, grid alternatives. You heard a little bit about that earlier. They are a nonprofit organization that proposes to install up to 30 kilowatts throughout the Roaring Fork Valley. They target income qualified homeowners. They're thinking they'd do 10 systems on income qualified homes throughout the valley. With this grant award, we would be approving funding for $5,000 for each of up to 5 systems to be installed in Pickens County, with a further condition that participants in the REACH program, which you heard about earlier, would receive first priority for inclusion in that. The idea being that we've already gone and done efficiency upgrades on these low-income or income-qualified properties. We've done the efficiency upgrades. Now it makes sense to go and support the inclusion of renewable energy generation on those homes. So with that, the recommendation is for $25,000 to support 5 3-kilowatt system installations in Pickens County. Okay. Hunter Creek condominiums. Give Rachel a second to go.
So, Jason, let me ask you, is there a better feedback system now for these grants and for the spending of these grants and the outcomes of these grants? Because there hadn't been in the past.
Yes.
And there was some...
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but yes.
Yeah, so we're taking care of that kind of dilemma.
Yeah. I mean, the most, I would say, I guess the most important thing is that we have very clearly defined terms on grant availability. So you have, we've now approved a 2-year grant term in our grant agreement, and so from the day that the project is approved, the grantee has 2 years to complete the project, and so we have an ongoing kind of ticker of what projects are out there, what funding is available, when their expiration dates are, and we stay in contact with those grant recipients to make sure that they are on track and completing within the allowed time frame.
Yeah, and I think also you need to essentially monitor the lifetime of these grants. In other words, this high efficiency boiler, it seemed like a good idea, but in 3 years it had given up the ghost, and whatever problems we encounter, because there's a lot of positive energy going into all these grants, and yet the results need to mirror the kind of hopes and dreams that these grants represent.
So we have, we do QA, quality assurance, after the fact, and it's come up at the board. So part of the reason I'm smiling is like, you must be smiling on the board meetings. No, I'm just kidding. But that has been brought up about how do we monitor the ongoing savings, because that's exactly right. Once, we project out a 10-year lifespan or a 20-year lifespan on a boiler, and when you're expecting X amount of kilowatt hours or X amount of therms, you want to see those. And so we've talked about changing our solar rebates so that we require a small monitoring system so that the homeowner gets feedback, we get feedback, just so we don't, we're not installing systems that aren't working, and doing some more follow-up on the utility
and
savings.
So systems that were proposed and seemed like a good idea, and for whatever reason they don't work out, you know then that system, that brand of boiler, that brand of hot water heater, although it had great write-ups, didn't really perform to the standards that we were all looking for. So.
One of the requirements that we have in our grantee agreement is that the recipients provide a utility data release. So we have access to their utility data for, I think, a year before the grant and a few years after the grant, so we can verify energy savings. We haven't exercised those recently just because of capacity, I think, to be able to chase that information down, but we have the signed utility releases from all of our grant recipients. So at any time when we have the ability, we can go and pull that information and do some of that comparative analysis.
Right, thanks.
Okay, Hunter Creek. So CORE engaged the Hunter Creek condominiums, and there are 4 different homeowners associations, and approached them with the idea of entering into an energy performance contract. We assisted them with an RFP process and took them through evaluation of that, and ultimately the selection of an energy services company called Amoresco, which has provided a proposal to the HOAs to do a significant suite of energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements across Hunter Creek. Their original proposal would have benefited all 4 of those HOAs, and in reviewing this and considering the idea of using public dollars through a REMP grant, the committee and the core board are recommending that this grant be targeted only to the benefit of the Phase 2 Homeowners Association, which controls 4 buildings that are comprised of 87 deed-restricted affordable housing units within that complex. The funding would basically support an enhancement of a proposed scope of work from a most basic, or what they're calling the necessary scope, which is boiler replacements. They have aging boilers throughout the complex, and enhance that to include solar thermal preheat systems and pipe insulation. So with that, the approved funding is for $100,000. This, in a way, is really creating a financial incentive for that homeowners association, which wouldn't necessarily see the economic benefit of making these types of investments, helping them get their vote approved to go ahead with the energy performance contract when they do have the vote before them. Any questions on that?
Well, some of the projects like this one are going to save natural gas. Others are producing solar PV. Is there one type of project that's much more bang for the buck for the money invested by Core?
Well, if you look in each of these summaries of
Cost
the
per kilowatt hour.
we basically break it down to a cost per kilowatt, and we normalize natural gas savings to a kilowatt hour equivalent. So we try and get it apples to apples as best we can. Like you said, this one is primarily a natural gas carbon factor that's being saved. And again, we go through a conversion that is buried somewhere in my office right now, and get to the kilowatt hour. So this is, less than.
It's like a quarter of the amount of some of the others.
Yeah, this is a highly cost-effective investment. If you think about $100,000 going towards, the total benefit of the natural gas therms that they would save over the life of the project, highly cost-effective. We've seen, and in talking to Holy Cross, is kind of gaining consistency with where they target their rebates and things like that. They look at, somewhere to 2.5 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour savings that they're looking to gain through their rebates. And we're seeing a lot of similar numbers here in these proposals. So we're pretty confident and comfortable that these are cost-effective investments of these dollars. Anything else on that?
Nothing else on that other than, I don't know who to talk to, John Ely, I guess, about whether or not that should be a separate resolution for Rachel to recuse herself. I don't know. I mean, it just occurred to me that we're probably going to vote on all this together, and I'll grab Rachel. I can grab her.
Let's, and we can work that out between
Yeah,
now and
I would
the.
just talk to
Okay.
council about that.
Good.
Well, the fact that this one is so efficient compared to some of the others, seems like we should be trying to do all of Hunter Creek perhaps, but something to think of in the future.
Yeah.
The application did come from the entire complex, and this is what the committee and the board recommended.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's typically these grants have been restricted to either public or quasi-public agencies, nonprofits, schools, government, or deed-restricted affordable housing, as opposed to typically as opposed to private for-profit businesses or private homeowners for their direct benefit, basically. So.
But we have done private businesses in the past. If you look back over the records, I mean, that's how Aspen's Geco actually started on their road to energy efficiency, if you will. Auden Schindler will credit Core for, providing some incentives to them when they needed to retrofit some lights, so.
Number 6.
Yes, so number 6 is a proposal or a recommendation to fund the Marble Distilling Company, which is a new business being established on Main Street in Carbondale. They are doing some innovative design around process heat recovery through their distilling operation, and reusing that heat in space heating for a small lodge that is being developed in combination with the distillery. They're also proposing to incorporate a closed-loop water recycling system, so water that goes through the distilling process and assists in the heat recovery would be stored in tanks rather than just being flushed down drain lines and requiring the use of additional new water. Pretty innovative, unprecedented in this type of application, and we are requiring as a condition, or proposing to require as a condition, that any of the system design that comes out of this project and the engineering drawings would be part of the public domain and available for any similar applications that want to replicate. So they had requested a couple $100,000 on a total project cost of $275,000, and the approved funding is at $25,000.
So this goes to the question that I think you were just talking about. What is the criteria that a for-profit company would get funding versus a nonprofit? I think the last sentence kind of explains that a little bit, but is that what they're looking at? Something that's going to have community benefit, such as the design being public domain, that somebody else could take this innovative use of energy savings and implement it elsewhere?
The criteria we've used in recent applications has been that the application demonstrates the potential for broad public benefit. And so, for comparison, I guess, or analogy, we recently funded Amatis Controls, which develops metering and monitoring equipment for solar hot water systems. So we wanted to, the funding for them was approved on the idea that they were going to go out and do system tune-ups and install these monitoring systems to understand production on existing systems throughout the valley that CORE had already benefited from CORE rebates, and to a large degree involved affordable housing units or other public facilities. So, you know, this was one certainly that the committee and the board wrestled with to a degree about, you know, whether that was demonstrated and there would be a broad public benefit associated. It just depends on how many similar applications you think are going to be sprouting up throughout the country or throughout the valley over the coming years and might actually take advantage of this system. The other thing is you have high visibility on Main Street in Carbondale, and if this technology were to be featured somehow in that facility, you might get, you know, good broad exposure for incorporating efficiency in these types of applications. So it's
Questions, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, my concern with it would be is the lifetime of the project. This is a new business, doing some pioneering. There's a liability, it seems to me, that it could be gone tomorrow. So I don't know what you do about that, but I think you need to come back to us in 5 years and say this worked, and or they went out of business after the second year. I'm just, this is high risk.
Yeah, and you know, I don't disagree with you, because the technology is what's innovative. It's the business. I mean, they're both innovative. Technology's it's a good one, but you bring up a good point there, and so. And
the application for the use of excess heat is essentially the way they do that is they open up a window, and so I think we need, and with data centers and that kind of thing, what do we do with that heat? We actually add refrigerant to it, which is kind of nutty. So what do you do with it? And this is a good pioneer kind of thing, but the whiskey business on Main Street, I don't know.
Rachel?
Yeah, no, I too think that you make a good point, Michael, but, any one of the homes that is retrofitted, someone could pass away, heirs sell the home, the next guy buys it and demolishes it, and builds a whole new home. Any one of these are subject to the changes of time, and, I think that what's important to me is kind of that we track if people only receive 1/8 of the grant they asked for, do they go forward with the project? If not, when do we find out the answer is no, we can't afford it, or working our pro forma now, and then look to ways to reallocate those funds. And that's kind of the same with any of these. If the project doesn't go forward or it's changed substantially, but.
Yeah, at a minimum, we know within 2 years if they've gone forward or not. With this one, we might know even sooner. We're talking about 1/10 of their, incremental cost of incorporating this technology, and it might just not be a feasible item for them to include in the build-out. So we'll know that in fairly short order, I think, on this.
Number 7?
Number 7, you all have to recuse yourself on this one.
No, we don't live near it. It's okay.
So this is a recommendation for funding to support the Picken County Library renovation and expansion. As you all know, Picken County is pursuing a remodel of the existing 31,000 square foot library and adding 4,500 square feet onto that. Specific energy efficiency measures are proposed to be included. This funding would support upgrading efficiency in the HVAC system, enhancing roof insulation, including LED lighting and daylighting controls, and including an energy monitoring display kiosk. And we have conditioned that this grant to require that CORE be involved in the development and design of the energy kiosk display, as well as the inclusion of robust public outreach and energy education program. They have documented about $440,000 of energy efficiency upgrades that are going into the project. They requested funding for half of that, and the recommended funding is at $145,000. Any questions on that? Okay. On to number 8, Rocky Mountain Institute. This was a little different. The RMI is pursuing development of their innovation center in Basalt along the river, and are in the midst of a capital campaign to support development of that project. They have requested specifically funding to support the inclusion of phase change materials in the construction of that new building, which is essentially a time-release thermal massing that goes into the interior, exterior, and interior walls of the structure and allows for more efficient use of things like heat pumps and renewable energy generation that's going to be included in the project. We didn't have specific energy saving breakouts for the inclusion of this component of the project, but in general, the overall design of the facility that they're using is significantly more efficient and energy saving compared to the median office building designed in the U.S. So they essentially requested funding for the entire cost of including the phase change materials at $91,000, and the committee and the board are recommending $10,000 in funding to support the project in general, and specifically go towards this project element with the requirement that on-site educational component be incorporated to highlight this design element.
Questions?
Okay, our final recipient, I need to recuse myself from this one, would be the town of Snowmass Village. The town of Snowmass has been using their Holy Cross Enhancement Fund to pursue a monitoring-based commissioning project, which basically evaluates all of the town-owned facilities and looks at opportunities to improve efficiency or possibly include renewables. in partnership with CORE and SGM. This specific request kind of targets some of the lowest hanging fruit, recognizing that the town operates 4 significant boiler systems that keep the snowmelt road safe and drivable throughout the winter. Those are on antiquated control systems, and this would ultimately upgrade controls, automation, and communications so that facilities managers can monitor and understand and target improvements in the efficiency of how those systems operate. And so this would be upgrades to 4 of those systems located at top of the village, Parcel C, Parking Lot 2, and the base village, which are all controlled and operated by the town. So you're looking roughly at about $40,000 in upgrades for each of those systems. The recommendation for funding is to support at the $25,000 level, which essentially acknowledges that this would be an incentive for the town to access more of those Holy Cross funds to support and complete the remainder of the project funding. This project also, I guess, should be noted, it has probably the most significant potential for greenhouse gas emissions reductions of all of the applications, and the highest return in terms of grant cost per kilowatt hour saved.
And Jason wasn't involved in the project.
That's right.
That's misleading though, because they're using the most. So
Sorry?
it's misleading because they're using the most. So even though the savings are great, the expenditure is enormous. So
It's a ripe opportunity.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be better to find an alternative method.
Yes.
So any other question?
So the recommended funding as it stands today caps up to the $500,000 that's been approved in the core budget. And as part of an overall funding request that's being proposed in this resolution, I'll let Mona take forward what you see in section 2 of the resolution.
Right, so we're here to request continued funding for our community grants program. Those are typically $1,000 to $10,000. It's a rolling basis. We don't have a deadline for them. We evaluate the merit of the proposal internally, and as you mentioned, one of the projects was the community church for installation this year. We've funded other projects as well that range from $1,000 to $2,000 over the course of the year. Design assistance grant, those are grants, again, when a project is in the design phase and there's opportunities for greater energy efficiency, we'd like to support the investigation of that so they can see whether the technology or the savings are going to bear out. And sometimes what you need to do is hire an engineer and architect to do those additional calculations, and we want to continue to try to support that. And then we would like to continue the low to moderate income grant program. We call it the REACH program. Again, we feel like we'd like to continue at the same level. We would probably, as we have done in the past, serve those very lower income customers, clients, homeowners that would technically qualify for weatherization, but they're not going to get served by Northwest COG, because if they can only do 2 applicants a year, and we had 11 that we were actually, we were able to serve 10 of the 11. So with our program this year, so we'd like to continue that, but go into the higher.
Question?
Yeah, Mona, when you can, it doesn't have to be now, but I'd love to see what is it that constrains the number to 2 in Pickens County with Northwest COG? Is it a percentage of
familiar
their
with that,
overall
to tell you the
program?
truth.
Because I've seen numbers where they do so many in the course of their. Is it a percentage of? But we can look at that later.
Yeah, I'll find out. We
Yeah.
just happened to call them up and ask them how many they were served, and they said this year, and maybe it was this year, they could only serve 2. But we were just
Because in
like,
past
Was
years
it
we've
they
had
can
0.
only serve 2, or they only served 2?
this year they could only serve 2.
Yeah.
That was the
Okay.
response we got, and one of them was the people we
Yeah.
sent, one household we sent to them.
I just love to find out the
Yeah,
details on
I'll-
that.
it's
I'll
new
follow
to
up.
me. I sit on the board of Northwest COG,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I'll follow
I didn't
up.
know that there was a restriction to the number of households. It has to do with applicants and income levels, of course.
Yeah.
You know, and there hasn't been a lot served in Pitkin County
Because of the income
because of
levels.
the income levels of homeowners. So,
I think that's what we're saying here is there's a certain percentage above poverty that you can serve with the weatherization, but there's still a gap in terms of what's affordable to make those,
yeah.
incentivize people to actually make those investments here. And so we're going up to 400% of poverty level, which is still, you know, a highly stressed budget and wouldn't necessarily be realistic for them to make significant energy efficiency investments, but with the support of this project, we can.
Yeah, I fully agree with the program. The other note I had for myself on this was to mention that I think it'd be good, whether it's a poster or whatever, to work with Nan Sundin and Health and Human Services so that those folks who, you know, there's obviously privacy issues, and so they won't be able to give you a list and say, here, contact them, but they could post your information for other people to take advantage of, or as they're dealing with clients, refer them to you.
And we did work, actually, Nancy Dean was part of the original instigation for the program, because we sat down and met with them. We had a
Great.
district, I can't remember, your department head meeting or something like that, and John said, does anybody want to meet with Mona in the coming time period? And she said, I do, and then the airport guy did. So that's how we ended up developing this program, and I know Michael had been very interested in seeing something for low to moderate. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's so, and we worked with APJA, and
Perfect.
unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, APJA still has it on their website, but, you know, we have a time frame, so we'll just have to get that updated. So, so we'd like to request funding for that. We'd like to continue the big buildings program, and this year probably target multifamily units. I talked with Charlie, and he's had about 7 different multifamily unit complexes contact him, and so that's a good thing. But what happens, you know, is sometimes you have a joint boiler that needs to be replaced, and you can help incent that, or you have 10 units or 100 units, and so we'd like to target multifamily unit buildings and get a, you know, almost a better bang for the buck, if you will, so because we can get more done. And then we're making an additional requestment for the residential, commercial, and renewable energy systems for Energy Smart program. We've had a we've had an increase in the uptake, and as I mentioned earlier, we've already done 173 assessments since September of last year, and it's going great guns. I mean, it's a good thing, but it's a good thing. And then the Randy Udall Energy Pioneer Grants includes our program delivery, and so we're requesting $1.3 million in request, which is about a third of the funds available in the REMP fund for this year, which is what the Core Board has suggested that we cap our request at. So
The 1.3 is a third?
yes.
Rachel?
Yeah, just some general comments, if it's time for that.
Yeah.
When the resolution comes back to us in full, I'd love to have the broader core budget as well as part of the introductory memo that shows the, you know, ongoing balances and maybe last year's expenditures or something, just so we track it in its entirety. The second is, you know, I'd love to have an update at some point in the future of what is going on with more of that national PACE program, the property assessed energy efficiencies. You know, we do still have the standing voter authorization to move that program forward, and as other funding sources may dry up over time, it'd be nice to see what we can do to continue to see if we can reinvigorate that now that most of the housing crisis is over, and I guess they've decided they're going to keep Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and everything like that. Then this is one thing I'll throw to the board to consider, but I personally would like to see us up the grants by a little teeny bit to do more at RMI and do closer to a quarter of their project costs. It's hard for me to look at doing the distillery for $25,000, as innovative as it is, and then know that RMI is just leading cutting edge of energy efficiency and what a showcase that place will be when it's finished. I realize they have a lot of resources. I'm not saying we should go beyond 25%, but I'd like to show a little more support than the $10,000. So that we could discuss in a minute or two. And then the last comment I want to make is just, you know, I attended the Club 20 business meeting, economic development on the West Slope with the governor yesterday. And, it's very interesting to see the dynamic of so many different communities where perhaps coal is their economy and not ours. So you had folks from Route talking about it and other counties. And so there's such a big push now to say the U.S. needs to start exporting its coal, and we need to start exporting our natural gas, and it's good for jobs and good for development. But there's no bridge to the future in those proposals. It's just how do we continue to extract the last of the profits from burning fossil fuels for who knows how long. And so I really do see this as a race against time. I don't know if we'll win that national battle about coal issues, but or exporting natural gas, but it's odd to think we're becoming more energy efficient here at home and reducing our carbon load, and in the name of other economies are willing to destroy it in some other places. So, I think we just really, really need to continue to pursue all these things.
Other comments, Michael?
Interestingly enough, in Salt Lake City, where my daughter lives, there were direct rebates when you purchased LED lights at Home Depot. So immediately, there wasn't any paperwork. You just got $8 or a significant amount of money off the price, off the list price, I suppose, of the LED bulb. And so that eliminates a lot of the friction that's involved within, should I purchase these? It's a lot of money, it's $20. Then I have to fill out a form, and then I have to submit it, and then I might get some money back, and so screw it, I'll just buy this. I'll just buy something else. I won't spend that much money. So I think it'd be interesting to see if you couldn't work on a program with the hardware stores, with various people to somehow give a direct rebate for specific items, particularly LED bulbs, and see how that dynamic works. I don't know actually how it works within the field, but I think people, when they see that kind of discounting, essentially is what they look at it as, is discounting of this bulb, they buy it. And so my daughter and my son-in-law bought, they counted up their cans in their house. They had 47 cans. They hadn't even realized they had that many cans. But their subsequent electric bill was a third of what it was previously. So,
Great idea.
Yeah.
It seemed like a good program.
Yeah, it's a great idea. We're going to be talking about rebates in the not too distant future, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Other comments? Only other comment that I had was 2 T's in Itner on the end of the resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. And I would just say chair, not chairman.
Oh, got it.
Is proper terminology these days.
I'll just respond to Rachel's request regarding RMI. We discussed this at some length. One of the criteria that we've used in all of these is to look at what the annual energy savings are, what the annual CO2 savings are, and what's the grant cost per kilowatt. And here's an instance where you've got an organization that's renowned for its expertise, its quantitative and qualitative information, but we were not able to get that information. And so we actually had started with a less number, but we felt we needed to support RMI in their efforts because of what they do in their education and research. So that's why we came up with that number.
And as I recall, part of the conversation was around a perceived need. Funding and supporting organizations that there was a greater perceived need in terms of providing the support versus maybe the capacity to come up with that funding on their own.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the explanation. And not the desire to do that, then let it go.
Steve?
I would tend to support all the recommendations of the board that looked at these, because you scrutinize things very carefully using a formula for coming up with different recommendations for the projects. And So I would tend to go with the time they spent, because we haven't scrutinized the whole process. But lots of really good projects, and I totally support what we're doing here.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say that, again, I think we've come a long ways in the last few years in terms of having a much more objective way to review grants. Michael first suggested having a separate committee, citizens committee. Now we've got sort of a formula, a scoring formula, very similar to how we look at the Healthy Community Fund grants, and it's been very effective. Similar to Healthy Community Fund grants, we have a way to follow up to see that these dollars are not only getting used, but getting used as they're supposed to. So again, credit to core staff for really following up on a lot of these suggestions and coming up with a system that we're able to look at something very objectively as we're trying to compare one applicant to another in the value.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'd like to commend Mona and Jason for their leadership. I think you've really made Core into an incredible organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
All right.
See you on the 9th.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Had a schedule a little bit here. Move to Mela's interest and future agendas.
Well, I'd rather maybe take our break now and give John the chance to let others know that we'll be.
Yeah, no,
Had a
Connie was
schedule.
planning on coming down early if you want to take your break, and then,
Get out earlier at the end of the day.
or take a full break and watch some of the America's Cup.
Thank
The World Cup.
you.
I was not checking the
0-0
score.
right now, I just checked.
I'm on the screen here.
So,
July 1st, 2014, Board of County Commissioners, Pickens County, Colorado. We are about to go into a 2013 second quarter budget results and budget update. I did want to just follow up on a question from our last presenter. I got an email from Liz Mullen from Northwest COG. Northwest COG weatherization program is required to do at least 3 houses in Pickens County each year. We can do more if we have funding and qualified applications. This is based on the population numbers for the 13 counties that we cover. For 2014, we are holding 6 slots open for Pickens County. 3 of those slots are filled. 2 of those 3 applications Corps helped us find. That's the information from Northwest COG. So there's no limit to the number of houses they can do. It's based on funding. There's a minimum based on balancing out the populations from all 13 counties that are served in that weatherization program. So that's,
Forward that on to Liz.
I did already. So I just wanted to have you guys have the update. I'd never heard that information before, any limit. So sorry to jump into something else there.
All right.
John and Connie, take it away.
John Redmond, Finance Director. I'm here with Connie Garofalo, who is the Budget Director. We're here to talk about the general fund budget, specifically 2013, the year-end results for 2013, the year-to-date results for 2014, and believe it or not, we're already a month into the 2015 budget, so we'll talk a little bit about the planning and what we're thinking about for 2015. Now, given that it's halftime of the U.S. World Cup match, we will try and be brief but thorough. So I think I would go to, we have on the screen the page, what is page 5, which is the 2013 revenues. Overall for 2013, we have an excess, a surplus, a little bit in excess of $1.4 million, and that's on a roughly operations budget of about $24 million. It's a good result. I think what we see in both last year and this year is that we've gotten tighter on expenditures, and that the revenues, we typically are pretty conservative in estimating those. Those continue to come in ahead of what we've seen before. So looking at this 2013 revenue chart, probably the biggest item that sees the overage is the community development fees. Based on increased building activity and some recapture on projects which were closing in 2013, overall ComDev came in over $800,000 ahead of budget. It's quite an extraordinary year, and we think that this 2014 will see some numbers which are also higher above the prior year. Sales taxes.
Can I ask a question on that, on the ComDev fees? Do you have any idea how much, what percentage of that increase is due to some of the new accounting we put in place in regards to collecting monies up front for building permits or estimated costs of projects?
There's a couple components of it. I think the first is when in 2013, if you came in and applied for a new permit, there's a little bit more scrutiny applied to the projected cost. So that would be one part of it. So you're seeing higher estimated project values. Prior to closing and getting a CO, ComDev is requesting to see pretty much a schedule of values, and a recalculation is done as compared to when your original project. Now the projects, as you know, in Aspen, a $1 million project can become a $5 million project. So I don't have the exact numbers with me, but I can certainly get them because I know Brian has some numbers.
Your sense is that's making...
I would say it was probably worth $400,000 to $500,000.
Yeah, so a good chunk of that.
Yeah,
yeah,
it does, and it continues to go on because there are most of these projects are multi-year projects, and I think on the recapture side you may see that for another couple of years. And as far as the the increase due to more scrutiny, I think that'll continue for hopefully forever.
Yeah.
Any more questions on ComDev? Okay. Otherwise, there's ups and downs. I think in other revenues, we're showing a $327,000 increase. I think one thing to consider here is that a lot of this can be interagency monies that go back and forth. And so it's not like a pure $327,000. There's an offsetting expenditure potentially somewhere else. As far as what kind of things are in there, I think the model traffic code, which is we put in about 2 or 3 years ago, saw an increase over budget of about $23,000. Medical marijuana permitting was $9,000 over what we thought. Mineral severance fees were up $15,000. So it's a lot of little nuts and bolts of those kind of things that come in. And when we look, you scroll up here for the capital fund, it's pretty much flat, with the exception of what the third or fourth line down there, which is grant revenues, which is showing a shortfall of $385,000. That is really just a timing difference. There's a $355,000 grant from CDOT related to the airport underpass that is coming in, has come in 2014. We thought from a budget standpoint it was going to come in 2013. So realistically, that was just off by $30,000 total. Any questions about revenue? Connie, I'll let you talk about the expenditures.
Okay, moving on to page 6 in your packet, these are 2013 expenditure results compared to budget. And the top section of the page in blue shows the different sections of general fund operations and where they came in compared to budget. You'll see that there is about $2,400,000 in savings here. That's not pure savings because it does include projects that are and grants, replacements that are being carried forward to the next year. Below operating savings, we have budgeted savings. In 2013, we expected to see 1.5% of our expenditures come in as savings, and that's the $328,000 number that we subtract out of the savings. It brings us down to a net operating savings of just over $2 million. As I said, a lot of that savings is not real savings, but projects and grants and things that are associated with that are being carried forward into 2014. Subtracting out the carry forwards, we get down to the adjusted operating savings of $216,000. This is a very small amount of savings. In past years, the county used to throw out pretty big amounts. It's not because departments are all of a sudden spending more freely. It's really because over the last few years, the budgeting has gotten a lot tighter. So department heads are budgeting tighter and tighter. Less savings are being thrown off every year, which we consider a good thing. It frees up the budget to be able to use it more in strategic initiatives in areas that are important to you, the commissioners, and to the county, and to our citizens. So again, this is a trend that we're seeing tighter and tighter on the expenditure side.
Just so I understand that, so we budgeted the savings of $382,000. In addition to that, we came in below 216. So really, you put those two together, that's how much better we're doing for the services that we're providing. Is that so? About $500,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good work.
Then going down further into the capital fund area, you'll see that the savings are very large here. That's because the projects are, in many cases, multi-year projects, and we'll budget the full amount as we start a project and then carry forward the remainder to the following year when the project will be completed. So almost $5.9 million in savings. However, we're carrying forward 5 million of that into 2014. We do see expenditure savings in capital, though, of almost 900,000. So that's a good amount of savings that goes back into the capital fund balance.
Rachel?
Can I ask, were those projects that were canceled or just savings on projects that have been completed?
It's a mixture. Some of them are savings even from 2012 in roads, asphalt that was carried forward until the projects were closed out, and then we realized the savings in 2013. Over half of it is for that. Other projects are ones that they decided didn't need to be done right at the moment. Reevaluating projects and timing of projects, and then other parts are just savings. There's some facility savings too.
Thank you.
Is the majority of that carry forward the ABC and the underpass? Because a lot of that kind of weather delays got us into 2014, delayed the payments that might have been made in 2013.
Yes, a large amount of it is for the different roads projects. On the next page, we have a little overview of the bottom line for 2013. The first part up on the top shows the beginning fund balance. This is where we started 2013. The next section is budget activity. That's how much we plan to spend during 2013, which is 4.1 million in the capital fund on different roads and facilities investments. And then the year-end result is what actually happened during the year. There were savings, not all of it was spent during the year, and you get down to the net bottom line of almost $1.4 million being added back to your fund balance. Leaves you with an ending capital fund balance of just over 7 million. And then, if you will, go to the very last page of your packet. There's a fund balance chart. If you take the 7 million left in capital, subtract the carry forwards, this gives us the 2014 beginning fund balance for capital of 2,479,000. And so you can see how from 2013, subtracting the carry forwards, it flows right into where we're beginning for 2014. So sorry to make you move around. Going back up to page 7. For general fund operations, we budgeted to use 313,000 of operations fund balance. But because of the excess revenue that John talked to you about, plus some expenditure savings, we ended up actually adding 2.3 million back into fund balance. This is before carry forwards. Again, here we subtract out about $1.1 million in carry forwards to give us an adjusted ending fund balance of 10.3 million, and that's where we'll start 2014. So net overall for 2013, we're about $1.4 million better than budget on operations, and about 866,000 better than budget on the capital funds. So some very positive results for 2013.
Any questions about 2013? Okay. 2014, we're off to a good start. Property tax, I think year to date is, from budget, we're up about 4.5%. From prior year to date, we're up about 7%. We're trying to project a somewhat flat to budget for the rest of the year, which shows us at year end to be up about a little over $70,000. Probably one of the bigger items is the payment in lieu of taxes. As you may recall, that was threatened last year. So we put in a conservative number, which was 2/3 of what we thought it could be. And fortunately for us, the funding was restored for a year. And that's given us a pop of about $450,000, which is a great thing. Otherwise, ComDev is continuing to come in higher. I think on a year-to-year basis, we're projecting that they're going to be 22% higher this year than last, which puts them at a little over $580,000 ahead.
So do you have any idea how you may budget for this coming year, the PILT funds?
Zero.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah, we don't know.
I mean, we weren't sure last year, but you budgeted 2/3 of the amount in there. And
I'm sorry.
You know, I was just going to say, there's a conference call tomorrow with the Western Interstate Region about this effort to try to tie PILT funding in the future to the Land and Water Conservation Fund reauthorization. I've been hearing a little more backstory that, a lot of Republican representatives of the West are more interested in the return the federal lands to the state program. And so seeing PILT fail is a way to move that along further. So, and also a lot of the Western representatives don't really like the Land and Water Conservation Fund because they don't think the federal government should own any more land than it does now or invest in its communities. So I'm not sure where it's going to go. There's no budget for it in that whole 2-year budget deal that was created by the two parties. There's some, backstory or thought that, maybe this has become a new gambit, and the only way to get difficult bills passed would be to attach 1 year worth of PILT on it, and you pull in some Western votes. And so maybe we'll go through this every single year. Others believe that this is appropriate deficit cutting of an entitlement to Western states, and it should go away forever. So I really don't know how to begin to budget it. I wouldn't budget more than half, and but I think budgeting zero is not actually unrealistic at this point in time.
PILT has seemed to goes through these cycles of annual appropriations versus multi-year commitments and whatnot. I do not believe that the payment in lieu of taxes is going to go away entirely, and so I wouldn't necessarily recommend to the board that it be taken out, even though it doesn't have an appropriation. But I do think it's going to be one of those very difficult to project revenues, because I doubt that we're going to continue to see it funded at 100%. And so now we're faced with the prospect of trying to choose some number. And this is one of our challenges. One of our goals has been to tighten our budget so that what we're actually spending is closer to what we're actually budgeting, and the same on the revenue side, so that we're not leaving too much on the table. We've done that on the expenditure side to a large degree, and you saw those results in 2013. Where we have not done it as successfully right now is on the revenue side, that in fact our revenues continue to come in stronger, and so I'd be hesitant to be too aggressive to take too much a percentage of it out. Some of that risk is mitigated, quite frankly, by the fact that while some revenues are down, others tend to be up. I think we may want to stick with our strategy of budgeting it at about 70% of what you would expect, so that 30% down, and track the legislation. We'll be working on our revenue estimates going forward for sure. But PILT is going to be a year-to-year thing. I think we're going to be needing to advocate for rural communities, being ourselves and our other rural communities that receive PILT, because it is a legitimate funding source for communities that have a large amount of federal lands within their jurisdictions. That does drive real service requirements. It drives real costs for those local communities. So it makes sense to have this relationship and partnership with the federal government. I don't think it's going to go away. I also wouldn't bet on it being 100%. going forward.
Yeah, but well, thank you. But I'd be concerned if you just put 0 in that number, because that would start to impact services and programs for next year. That could drastically affect public safety, fire, whatever.
And that's why I would be more prone to go with a 70% number or even higher, because of the fact that in essence, you've got $450,000 in your back pocket from this year to kind of cover a shortfall in a total sense. And it does put some spending on the back burner if you shrink it too much.
Yeah.
As far as the revenues related to capital spending, they appear to be flat, although it's early. I think that's something to consider overall also, as we're looking at, we're at the half-year mark. A lot can happen, especially on the expenditure side. I think we're showing the expenditures to be pretty tight, and I think we'll see some additional savings as the year goes on. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. So 2014 expenditures, as John was saying, it's still early to be able to project a lot of the savings. Typically, we see more savings materialize as the year goes on. At this point in the year, departments are hesitant to say, oh, I don't think I'll spend that. This is just an estimate. In administration, we think that we should see about $46,000 in savings by the end of the year. In public safety, you'll see a large overage there. We have tried to get our department heads to budget not for the worst case scenario, but for a normal operating amount. If all of our 30-some general fund departments budgeted for the worst case scenario, we would have inflated expenditure budgets and then wouldn't have the capacity to do the things that we really should be doing for our citizens. And so in this case with public safety, they did have a worst case scenario with their expenditures at the beginning of the year, and they'll be bringing a budget supplemental to you in about 2 weeks, and so we will deal with some of that overage at that time. In Public Works, you'll see an overage projected. That has to do with the amount of snow that we received this last winter and the hours for clearing roads and other expenses related to that. But again, I think as we go through the year, we'll see other savings that will balance out some of the overages that we're seeing at the moment. On the capital side, it's a little too early to be talking about savings. At least no one wanted to call anything out just yet. So then we have a summary of the activities so far in 2014 with our beginning fund balance. Capital fund, it looks like we'll be right on track to meet budget we're just showing a negative $2,400, but I'm sure that will change as we go on. In the general fund, we budgeted to spend $245,000 of fund balance, but with our excess revenue, balancing out overages and expenditures, we think that we'll be about $473,000 better than what we were budgeting. And so instead of using $245,000 in fund balance, at this point we think we will add $227,000 to the general fund balance. Those projections are reflected on the chart on the very last page of your packet. The chart shows where we start the year, with the bar being the fund balances at the beginning of 2014. You'll see there's $10.3 million in the blue section, which is the unrestricted general fund balance. As I said before, we think this will grow by about $227,000, so that your blue section there, the unrestricted fund balance, will be a little bit bigger at the end of the year than it is at the beginning of the year. On the capital side, we start the year $866,000 better than we thought we would have started as far as our fund balance goes because of the positive 2013 results. We had planned to spend about $1.5 million, and we're on track for that, so we should end the year at about $986,000 in the capital fund balance. Any questions on our projections for 2014 or the fund balances?
I had one question on this chart, and I think I brought this up during budget at some point. The table reserve isn't the $4 million. That's a contingency that we put in place as well as the table reserve.
Right.
And I think I had asked to kind of just have that represented on this chart, because I think it's good for Pickens County to know that we have a contingency well and above the table reserve. I think it's almost a 3-to-1. If I remember correctly, the contingency that we hold in place for our county versus what's required by Tabor.
That's right.
And the technicality there, Rob, is that the Tabor reserve doesn't technically have to be held just in the general fund.
Yeah.
It's one of the, it's really can be held in the balances of all funds.
All funds.
Yeah, but we can certainly, we can certainly cut.
I mean, because the table reserve is a percentage of the total bar.
Yeah, it's
So
very
it's
small.
where that is, and then, I think it's good for the public to know that we're doing things on a conservative level here with our self-enforced contingency that we keep in place. Any other questions?
You want to talk about 15?
Yeah, and so, this is going to be teeing us up then for the 2015 budget planning, which is already started. And, overall, the news is good. We've been budgeting conservatively. We've been managing to continue to get projects out in the community and to provide services. But we do have some challenges coming up for the 2015 budget that we'll need to spend some time on with you and with the organization. We talked about these a little bit during the retreat, but the organization really identified 3 areas that we're continuing to present challenges and possibly be areas that if we don't address them well in our financial planning and organizational planning going forward, are potentially going to be barriers to us continuing to be able to provide the high level of service that we have. And that starts with our facilities, both in terms of the quantity of space and in some cases quality of space is becoming a real concern. I think we saw that particularly in public safety this year as we were worked through the events with the Pfister trial that really stressed our capacities, and while we managed that situation well, it was not without a lot of extra effort and such on part of the organization. We also mid-year had the findings of asbestos and what that meant to displace one of our major facilities. So we've got some real concerns there. We are continuing to plan. We have a remodel plan largely completed for this building. However, that did not address the question of quantity of space to the degree that we needed to, and so we have been engaged in a project with the City of Aspen, and we've engaged the same consultant to do some additional space planning for public safety and courts. We hope to have the results of that study, really preliminary results, by the end of this month, and final no later than September, that we can start to build in and discuss strategies within our capital plan and how we coordinate remodeling this building and potentially finding opportunities to address additional space needs, either in partnership or on our own. The other main issue, so the other two issues, one is just simply capacity, that as when we went through the downturn, we cut back in a number of areas on our operating capacity. We've also kept a pretty strong handle on growth in terms of capacity. So that could be new positions or just service level demands that we're seeing throughout the organization, particularly as the economy increases, the economic activity increases, and we're seeing our revenues come back to a certain degree. We're seeing more and more pressure to add resources or address capacity needs in the organization. Really, capacity needs can be addressed one of four different ways, and this is how we're talking about it as an organization. The easy way is just add more resources. Continue doing business as you've been doing it. Add resources to maintain service levels and in the face of increased demand. Another way is to change how you do business. Look for opportunities to improve productivity, maybe through application of technology or identifying redundancies between departments or across the organization and changing business processes to address those. So that's an opportunity. Another way is to look at, are there service levels we should be reducing? And that's a way to address capacity needs, is to change expectations. And then the last way is to just keep your head down, keep doing what you're doing, and hope that the capacity issues will sooner or later go away. Really, how we have traditionally addressed these questions is, we have from time to time we have a really good effort to change how we do business. But the truth is when our noses are to the grindstone and the capacity issues are, upon a department, it's very difficult to get them to both take the time to step back with capacity. And it's also sometimes an issue of having the right expertise at the table to really map out business processes and look at alternatives, particularly when it comes to the application of technology. And so, maybe we need to look at an organization of, how do we resource ourselves to be better at making process improvements. Service level decreases. We are generally not an organization that looks at service level decreases, and I wouldn't anticipate that that's going to be a place that will go in this budget, but again, even if we were to, it's about having the right level of analysis and capacity to really analyze that, which when your nose is to the grindstone and you're trying to deliver service out the door, it's difficult to step back and do that. So we're going to be wrestling with, we already know that within the organization, if we were just to go out today, you would probably see, I think we've identified 15 or 16 potential positions.
Maybe a little less.
Maybe a little less at this point.
Maybe more than 10.
Obviously, that's too much growth in the organization, so that's not going to happen. So we're talking a lot about an organization as to what are the joint resources that maybe we can share to help us improve productivity, help us streamline how we deliver services without sacrificing those service levels, but fitting within the constraints that we have. And the third area that the organization has been really concerned about, but it's, we've been making a lot of progress on, is just making sure we continue to maintain a pay system that will allow us to retain our qualified employees and to recruit employees to continue providing that high level of service. So we've got a huge challenge. Revenues are doing well, but when you look at the combined pressures right now of really renewing and getting our facilities up to the quantity and quality that they need to be, making sure that we address capacity issues to a degree that allows us to maintain the high levels of service we are and maintain the infrastructure of our people. there's going to continue to be the classic question of more demand than resources. And it's always in a more challenging environment. When things are going good, it's sometimes harder to see that we're presented with that problem. So it's going to be an interesting 2015 budget. We're going to be working and talking to you a lot about how we deal with the facilities issues, capacity issues, and continue to really prioritize our employees. So more to come.
Very good.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, open our notice of interest. Mike's here to talk a little bit about the bank stabilization that we had requested in one of the proposals that came before us. And I was curious that it came back as an MOI, and we asked for that. Mike, take it away.
Sure. What, was this supposed to be an agenda item summary?
No, I don't know. It's still part of the hearing process, isn't it? Or no, it's not.
Well, what we did was the board had approved it on May 14th.
Yeah.
And then if the peer review comes back and it's not favorable, and if there is going to be adverse offsite impacts, the condition we wrote in the resolution was that further county review is required.
Okay.
Yeah. But basically what we did on May 14th was we heard a bank stabilization request for 48 Riverbend Road. And it's an eroding bank on the Roaring Fork River. Wingo Junction is the right descending bank of the river. And an engineer had been hired by the property owner to put together a stabilization project. And if you remember, there was two parts of the request. One was for foundation work at the house that exists there now, and then also bank stabilization work as part of it. And we approved the foundation work, but at the hearing, the board thought it was a good idea to have a peer review of this bank stabilization, because they were going to place boulders in near the floodplain, and they wanted to backfill and then revegetate it. And the questions that were outstanding were there any off-site adverse impacts that could be associated with doing this project? And staff certainly aren't engineers, so the board directed us to solicit proposals for someone to do a peer review of this project. And we work closely with 3 other firms in the valley that do this type of work. We solicited out to all 3 firms. One person put a proposal together for us and said they could analyze the upstream and downstream impacts of this. And it was Claffey Ecological Consulting Incorporated, and that's Mike Claffey, who we see here from time to time on stream work. So his proposal's attached, and he says he can visit the site and analyze the project and give us a document outlining what we're requesting for $1,800. So I've attached that to the memo, and we're prepared to sign a contract with Claffey unless the board thinks we should do something else.
We asked for it. I think we should go forward with it. It's a reasonable price.
And this isn't something that the applicant would pay for?
Good question.
At the hearing, we didn't go there. We didn't.
Yeah, I know.
That would have been the place to have done it, to say peer review and shall be paid by the applicant, and the applicant would have said, okay, I agree. But we didn't go there at the meeting. Community development does have some funding in our professional services contract amount. $1,800 is something that we can deal with.
Yeah. Any other questions? Is there?
I think we asked for this. It helps us ensure that the other properties along there and the bridge abutments are adequately protected and not going to make the problem worse somehow. So I think we should proceed.
I mean, I think as a matter of, other applicants coming forward, does this become a regular thing where we end up doing a study, I think it needs to be something that's worked into the community development fees as a requirement for bank, because, as I think Michael said many times during this hearing, the river was here well before everybody else, and it moves, and it has powers and forces, and, because it's eroding someone's lawn away doesn't give someone the right to, throw all sorts of boulders in there that are going to affect other aspects of the river. And they should be doing those studies in the future, is my opinion, to some extent. I don't think we should burden them too heavily either, but some sort of reasonable analysis. But I'm okay with moving forward with this plan. Rachel?
Yeah, I think it'd be a larger discussion. They did have their consultants, and their consultants presented a plan. We were the ones kind of saying, yeah, but I'd like to have that vetted again by someone else, I'm not sure. And so was a different level of scrutiny that we required. And there are precedents when the wildlife experts for the Drosty property at the time said, this is where the best placement of the places would be. And we said, no, we'd like to have our own information, our own source who's responsible to answering to us, not to you. And so it becomes the different role of who's a project proponent versus who's a third-party reviewer. I don't think it will set long-term precedent, but I do think you're right. It merits a work session and further discussion if we were able to come up to some sort of criteria where it would kick in to be that the board would only feel comfortable making an approval with a third-party review of some sort, and how to fund that.
And my recollection was that it wasn't necessarily a peer review, but an analysis of upstream and downstream effects, which was not done by their consultant to a great level, And that was the concern that I think Michael brought forth was, how does this affect, the takeout of boats? How does this affect the property up above it and where the water is flowing, and the riparian aspects of that? And I think that's where it came from, not necessarily, we don't trust your analysis, let's have our own analysis. It's, we want an analysis that expands a larger span of the riverbed. But looks like you've got your approval to kind of move forward on this.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Future agendas?
Yeah, really just a couple items. Reminder, I think Rachel had brought this to everyone's attention at a previous meeting, but the Water Congress Conference is in Snowmass on August 20th and 22nd. I know, Rachel, you're signed up, but if any other board members are interested in going to that, if we could let Charlotte know. Steve, you're...
I actually won a free admission to it when I was down in Gunnison. They did a drawing and I won, so it won't cost the county anything for me to attend,
okay.
and I'm enrolled to go to that too.
Fantastic.
All right. Well,
good job. Can you buy some lottery tickets for us?
And then, we've had the Celestial hearing on for July 21st, and just as staff has been planning for that, the question did come up about last time the meeting was here. It was almost a standing room only kind of audience. I don't know if that's going to be the case again when it's a single subject. I think we also had some other hearing items going in and out at that point. But before we get too close to that date, we wanted to do a check-in to make sure the board's comfortable having that hearing here versus us looking for an alternative location. Quite frankly, I can't think of a good alternative location to accommodate that many people. The Rio Grande can certainly seat more people, but I do not think it's conducive to dialogue and really hearing what's going on. The fire station is very difficult. We actually couldn't set up for a live broadcast. So but I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention since we did have those logistical items and just do a check-in with you and make sure you're comfortable having it here versus looking for an alternative location.
I'm comfortable with it here. I think we had the marijuana people here that day. We had a lot of consultants that may not all be here for this second. And it wasn't shoulder to shoulder standing room by any means.
Yeah.
We could put a jumbotron in Wagner Park.
I think they're letting the grass recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll plan to have it here. I just wanted to, since we did have that capacity issue, not to highlight our facility issues.
Yeah, no, I think we should have it here too, and the one thing would be maybe to kind of double check the chairs before the meeting, because sometimes the chairs have gone to other places or they're all stacked in the corner, and so we fit more people in when the chairs are set up in advance.
Okay. All right, that's all I had on future agendas.
Anybody else?
John, I mentioned this last time, the idea of having the CSU extension agent come on a work session, but I didn't notice that.
We're getting that scheduled, actually. We met with them that week, and we had a really good discussion, actually, about them coming back, and I cannot remember what they actually do have a date in mind on a Tuesday, but I think it may be stretching all the way out into September timeframe, closer to budget.
And is this person was hired just for 1 year with Eagle County?
Our agreement with Eagle County is just for 1 year, but they were hired on full-time. And so we did have a discussion with Eagle County. It's going to be staff's intent to bring to the board a recommendation that we continue that partnership at the same level that we've had it this year. And I think when you have a chance to visit with the extension officer and kind of hear, what they've been doing, you'll see why that is. More isn't really a possibility because it takes too much away from Eagle County right now. But we've talked about also different ways for him to do outreach here in Pickens County and that sort of thing. So we thought maybe a little bit closer to budget, and also to give him a little bit more time to just develop a record of what's happening this summer, George. And so I think it was in September they were thinking about coming back. Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, a couple of things. We have the Club 20 subcommittee meetings at the end of the month in July on the agenda, and I wanted to point out that on Thursday, the 17th of July, as well as Friday, the 18th of July, will be the Club 20 meetings over in Edwards, and they are different subcommittee meetings than the ones in Drive. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So if anybody else cares to attend, I am planning on attending. I know Steve had thought he would, and I should be back from NACO in time to do that. Particularly the meeting on the 17th, they're going to have their health care committee meeting, and they are going to look at this broader question of the geographic boundaries for the state health insurance plans. And I think they have Town Jankowski from Garfield County on the agenda to be a speaker to that. But, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And while we worked very hard in concert with Summit County, Eagle, and Garfield to see the geographic boundaries of the insurance districts change for this coming year, there's been fears raised that this is going to dramatically impact all the counties whose district we're now being merged with. And so I think we made some gains there. It's going to be important to not lose them and see any sort of resolution demanding they be changed back or whatever. As we all know, that was a one-off. It was the first year they'd ever been drawn that way, and we saw the results of that in a lot of inequity in our rates. And so we're hopeful that both with new providers entering the market on the West Slope and the larger district, it actually, and the proving out of the whole program this year will result in lower rates for everyone. But that is going to be an important meeting on the 17th.
Others, Rachel?
Yeah, I had one other item, and I don't know if you had seen it, John. I know you probably get a bazillion emails a day. I did send an email on Friday to Rob and John Ely asking that if we had a chance to get a basin implementation plan presentation before the board scheduled, that would be valuable. I know I had mentioned before the plan goes in July 30th. It doesn't look like on this agenda it would work. But I understand that communities will be able to continue to improve and enhance the planning document they submitted after that date of the 30th up till somewhere in the middle of next April or something. So
Yeah,
it's not
and I
quite as
did-
timely.
I did get that, and I think John was reaching out to somebody to check on dates for presentation. So we don't have it in here, but we're working on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
John Ely was working on
Yeah.
it.
that would be perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
I just had one quick, I guess, question on July 22nd, and to kind of comment on to something that I had mentioned to John Peacock in one of our meetings. About 3 years ago when I first got on the board, I thought these agendas were a little thin in their information, and I think at that time they kind of put a bullet point or two after some of these things. For instance, the smuggler tipping fee discussion. I'm not really sure what that is. Is that something tipping up on smuggler mind, or is it the landfill tipping fee discussion and the landfill update? So I'm just asking the board that I'm giving John a little direction to put a little bit more information on these agendas so that the public knows what they are, because the future agendas are in our packet, and they can know, a little bit more about what the topic is under these. There's another one in here which is airport study phase 3. And, it could have just a little bit more as to what phase 3 is. We kind of know what phase 3 is, the regulatory things with the FAA and that sort of aspect of moving forward with what we did with phase 2. But the public doesn't know, and I think there's room on these future agenda sheets to have just